Tomorrow nerds! This week on the LarpHouse, I'm going to be trying to dispel some myths about LARP and to help aspiring LARPers overcome the 5 most common obstacles that keep them from trying it out. Many of you guys have expressed these exact concerns in the comments or in messages on our Facebook page, so I hope this helps you out. But first, some news. I will try to keep this brief, but you can click this button right here if you want to skip to the actual episode. There is currently a poll up on our Patreon page that is open to absolutely everyone about what kind of content you would like to see in the near future. We can do all of the topics mentioned, but this will help us determine our episode lineup. So if you have a moment, please take some time and cast your vote. The link to the poll is in the description of this video, and you'll have until the end of January. We are still looking for GM interviews and staff member interviews from all kinds of LARP games. Even if you run like an escape room, if you've ever run or staffed any kind of LARP event, we want your point of view. We are also taking in-character interviews for next year's Meet the Characters Global Edition video. The links to both of the interviews and guidelines are in the description of this video, on the Patreon page along with the poll. We are also still running our limited edition travel guide reward. $15 or more on Patreon gets you a custom wand in exchange for helping us meet our travel goal in time to go to the College of Wizardry in Poland in March. And I just want to say thank you so much to everyone who's already helped so far. I have to say it's only been a couple days as of the recording of this video since we released it, and I'm kind of blown away by the response so far. So thank you so much. And if we make it to Poland, I swear I'll live stream eating Birdie Bot's every flavor beans while I'm drunk or something. I see my doom in this box. Anyway, let's get started. Reason number 1. So, you want to LARP, but you are afraid that people will judge you. And I'm not going to lie, this is a pretty big one. Some people do judge you, and it's just going to be how it is. But I am going to try to break down the most common reasons people tend to judge LARP and tell you how I deal with that. One reason people tend to judge LARPing is because they think it is childish, and I can understand why they would think that. It is essentially playing pretend. Here's the thing though, that's not a bad thing. By exposing yourself to situations that you would probably never encounter in your daily life, playing pretend exercises your ability to improvise, build confidence, work with a team, and it helps you to think creatively and empathize with other people. All skills that I find invaluable. Those are just a couple benefits. We haven't even started talking about LARP as therapy, but if you want to see my personal experience with that, you can watch our video about how LARP helped cure my anxiety. I think the real issue here is that people somehow feel that LARPers are childish in their real lives. We get a bad rap with the stereotype of the person who is unemployed living in their mom's basement. But on the whole, the LARPers I have met have by far been the most talented, creative, and educated people that I've ever met personally in my actual life. Like, we have college professors, mathematicians, Disney Imagineers, actual blacksmiths, military service members, and a bunch of other just super talented people. So I guess if they think that all of those types of people are childish, maybe we are. Now this is an interesting one. Some people say that LARP is anti-religion or even a satanic cult. Now that is just so far from my scope of experience that I will just say this. In LARP, you will very likely be exposed to some kind of fantasy religion, many of which are polytheistic or at least based on some sort of ancient pagan religion. However, I think that critics fail to see that the LARP community as a whole is extremely capable of separating their own personal views, especially religious views, from their characters' religious views. Which means that we do tend to have players of all different religions and walks of life, which I actually think is really cool. Even if someone does become too invested in their game, which can happen with pretty much anything, I have always seen people take it upon themselves to take a break and come back when they are ready. I am not overly religious myself, so that's pretty much all I can really say on this. I will show you a cool page I found about RPGs on a website called ChristianGamersGuild.org. It's a pretty good read no matter what you worship, or who you worship, if anything. So here are a couple things that you can say to people who are judging you. Number 1, there are so many hobbies out there that are like LARP that people who judge LARP have probably participated in something like it without even realizing it. LARPing can cover pretty much any experience in which you pretend to be someone or somewhere you are not. Halloween Horror Nights, escape rooms, Renaissance Fair, virtual reality stuff, even laser tag. They can all be considered just different types of LARP. So you could ask them why they have a problem with LARP and not any of those things. If people still insist on judging you and you just can't argue with them, here are my final thoughts on that. Often when people judge something, it is because someone is making a choice that they would not make for themselves, usually because it would shame or embarrass them in some way. And what causes embarrassment or shame? Insecurity, or socialized stigma, but the root cause is insecurity. And I'm not saying that to judge these people in turn, I am just saying that so that you know that if someone really wants to judge you, it's more about them than it is about you, and that makes it a lot easier to ignore. Something I like to tell myself is, if they think they're too cool to do something, it really just means they're not cool enough. And now we have number 2. You want to LARP, but you are an underage wizard. Fear not, if you are a LARPer under 18, minigames will allow you to play if you bring a parent or guardian. Check out Guard Up at guardup.com for a really cool example of a LARP summer camp. They run Wizards and Warriors as well as a zombie-themed educational LARP summer camp experience. Really, really cool stuff. Insurance can be a lot harder to get when you include underage wizards, so some games are just not going to allow people under 18 to play. Just don't hold it against them. Other camps that feature LARP include Camp Pillsbury in Minnesota, features a boffer LARP activity. Looks really super fun. There is also Independent Lake Camp in Florida, which looks just super fancy. I think they have like filmmaking and stuff there too, but they also have boffer LARP. And then there are Pally Mountain Adventures in LA. Real quick thing about Pally Mountain in LA, the LARP that I staff for actually ran a game at their facility so that they could learn about LARP for their program, and it was amazing. They actually even have heated floors. It's super cool. Highly recommend them. And there's even Epic Nerd Camp for adults. Just throwing that out there. I want to go. And there are likely many more. This is just what I found from a couple minutes of Google search. 3. You want to LARP, but there are no games near you. You are going to want to check websites like larping.org or larpcensus.org for a list of registered LARP events near you. And do a Google search for LARP and your area as well. You can also search for theater events like Dungeon Master. Meetup is also a good website to look for LARPs and fighter practices in your area. If there really are no games near you, one option is to road trip. I know a lot of people who drive out of state for a game, and some people even fly. I know that's not feasible for everyone, but even LARPers who live in the same general area as their games have to drive up to like 3 hours to get to their campsite, so it's not abnormal to have to drive a little ways. Another option is to create your own LARP event. It can be a daunting task for sure, but you can at least start by making a Facebook group of people in your area who are interested. You can start with a tabletop game and build from there. If nobody wants to staff the game because everyone wants to play, let's face it, who wouldn't want to play? You can do a rotating staff like my main LARP Dying Kingdoms does. Have a person staff for a year or longer, or just however long they can, and then let them switch out and make their own characters. This can make for some complications and continuity errors if you're not careful, but at least everyone would get to play. Number 4, you want to LARP, but you are broke as all heck. Well, I have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is that LARP does cost money, but the good news is you can do your very best to mitigate the costs, and you can spend as little as possible. The first thing you can do to mitigate costs is to NPC for a while. We have a cool video about NPCing up here. That stands for non-player character. It basically means you play a character that plot writes to further the story as opposed to a character that you write to play the game. NPCing for a game is usually way cheaper or totally free. Costumes and food tend to be provided, and sometimes they even do lodging. The next big cost tends to be costumes. If you're NPCing, you don't have to worry about that. But if you are PCing, there are ways to get really cheap costumes. We have several videos about how to make your own basic costumes for little monies, but another cool thing that we like to tell people is to go thrift store shopping, possibly alter your finds there. LARP Girl has a really good video about tips for LARP thrift store shopping. Up here. It is entirely possible to assemble a perfectly good costume for about $30 or less. If you don't like to go outside or you're looking for something oddly specific, I would suggest downloading the Depop app. It is a used clothing app that makes it really easy to find what you want in your size, in the color you want it, at a good price. And no, we are not being paid to say this, I just really like that app. You can even transform a $10 Halloween store costume like we did in our Halloween episode, only spend about $30 or so. Trust me, nobody is going to judge your starting costume. You take a look at how I started as Petra. This was my very first LARP, and I literally wore a child's Renaissance shirt, a leafy vest, and some spandex. And you can look at me 3 years later as the same character, just a bit of a difference, just a little bit. Then there's weapons. Store-bought weapons look amazing enough to make me drool, but if you can't afford to drop about $100 on a beautiful, beautiful latex foam weapon, you can make your own for like $20. We have a video about how to make your very own LARP-safe weapon. You can also check out Plastidip artists or pages like it on Facebook for inspiration. LARPcraft also has a pretty good series about how to make your own boffer weapons, so you can check that out as well. Number 5, you want to LARP, but you're nervous. Maybe you have social anxiety. Maybe you just don't think you're charismatic enough, or you don't know what role-playing will be like for you. Maybe you just don't think you're going to be good enough at some aspect of LARPing. Here is what I have to say to you. Those are all 100,000% normal fears, and we all had them, including me. What I learned really quick was that the LARP community is probably the least judgmental community I have ever encountered, and whatever your comfort level is will not only be respected, but supported. And if it's not, you can send those people to me and I'll tell them to fork off, because that's not what LARP is about. For tips on how to prepare for your first LARP, I recommend watching these 2 videos by Momo O'Brien. For those of you who live under a rock, she is a wildly popular YouTuber and happens to be a LARPer. She explains the basics of LARP in a very user-friendly way, and she's also relatively new to the hobby. We at the LarpHouse also have a couple videos for newbies. Another piece of advice if you're anxious is to reach out to someone already in the community through a reliable Facebook group and ask them questions, kind of make a buddy. Maybe try going to a fighter practice in your area to meet a smaller group of these people in person. When I showed up at my first fighter practice, I couldn't even force myself to hit my opponent with my weapon because I was so scared and anxious. Now I wail on goblins like it's a Tuesday. You can talk to my battle bruises about it. But if that all still sounds really scary to you, cash in on a favor and convince a friend to come along. We highly encourage the buddy system in LARP. The last piece of advice I will leave you with on the nervousness factor is a quote from the Eternal Space Mom, Carrie Fisher. Stay afraid, but do it anyway. What's important is the action. Do not wait to be confident. Just do it and the confidence will follow. That is all I've got for you for this week. I hope that some part of this was helpful to at least one of you nerds. Don't forget to check out the links that we talked about earlier that are all in the description of this video. And as always, like us, subscribe to us, but most importantly, fight with us. And there's even epic Nerb camp. I'm such a nerb.
Good morrow, nerds.
Good morrow, nerbs.
This week on the LarpHouse.